I believe you did. Welcome back to Senate Education this Tuesday, January 16th. We have Chancellor Mauck with us, as well as some of her staff. And I thought, first of all, welcome to Senate Education. We're really excited to have you here. Congratulations on your appointment. In a way, it's a welcome to Vermont, but I think you also have some Vermont roots, which I'm sure you'll talk a little bit about. I thought before we get started, we could just go around the room and introduce ourselves so you know who's here. So we'll start with Senator Hashim.
Hi, I'm Nader Hashim from Dummerston, representing Whatcom County. Nice to meet you.
Hi, we've met. I'm Martina Rocky-Lick. I'm a senator from Burlington, represent Chittenden Central.
Brian Campion, and my county is Bennington, with a little bit of Wyndham County tucked in there. And we'll just shift for a second to our wonderful committee assistant, Morgan. Nice to meet you all. Morgan doesn't have a last name. Like Cher. Right.
Morgan Feldman.
And a terrific committee assistant and a senior, right?
Yes, at UVM.
Good afternoon, Dave Weeks, Rutland County, come from Brock. Terry Williams, Rutland County.
So really, the floor is yours. However you would like to tell us a little bit about yourself, your process in arriving here, and any updates you'd like to share.
Certainly. Well, thank you. I will first introduce Drake Turner, who is the new Executive Director of External and Governmental Affairs, and Sharon Scott, who I believe you probably all know, who is the Chief Financial and Operating Officer at the Vermont State College System. I would just like to start really by saying thank you to all of you and thank the legislature for what it has done to really bolster up the Vermont State College system in the last few years. One of the reasons that I was very interested in this position was I had read a lot about this political legislature, and frankly, that doesn't always happen. It has not happened right now. So yes, I'll tell you a little bit about me. Not Vermont roots, but New York roots. I was born in Poughkeepsie, New York, and spent most of my growing up years actually in Pennsylvania. I have been in higher education for 25 years, first at the public institution in Pennsylvania, which is known as PASSHE. I was a math professor there for 10 years, worked with a number of committees with the faculty and administration. I then moved to become the dean of the College of Education and had opportunities to work on the administrative side. And so the system that is the Vermont State Colleges is very known to me. The thing that I find the most interesting about this system is that a student can come in and start and get anything from a credential to a master's degree in a very stackable way. And that is very unique and something that I really think that we need to continue to leverage. And then most recently, I was at a private institution in Kansas where I was first vice president of academic affairs and then as president. But the students really are the same, 50% Pell eligible, 50% first gen. At the former two institutions I served, also a lot of underrepresented minorities. As you'll hear in this presentation, even in Vermont, we have 20% BIPOC students at the Vermont State College system. And so we are serving students who might not otherwise go to college. We are serving returning students. We are serving students who come in and start in high school with us. And that really, to me, is something that's very exciting. And so as I said at the beginning, thank you for everything you've done for us. And I just want to say that your vision for transformation, as well as your ongoing financial support, have really allowed the system to step back from the brink of immediate financial peril and carefully plan for the future of this system. And I think that, again, is something that really I would like to thank all of you for. What I'd like to do today, and I'm more than happy to give you any more details on my life. Higher ed and public higher ed are a passion of mine. One of the things I have done throughout my entire career is look for what are the barriers and how can I help to remove those. I have typically found that they are academic, they're social, emotional, or there are financial barriers. And most recently, it seems that those financial barriers are one of the biggest challenges that students have today. And a system like the Vermont State Colleges where the legislature has made such an investment is something where we can actually see where students can come in and afford the education that they are looking for. So for recent news, I'm going to just provide you an update of some of what has been going on at the Vermont State Colleges system over the last year. As an academic, to me, I think we always have to remember back to this is about our students. It's about the citizens of Vermont and the fact that every Vermonter can participate in higher education through the Vermont State Colleges system. I want to talk about some of the structural components. We'll talk about transformation. And I just want to thank the dedication really of the faculty and the staff and the students in the system, because really they have been part of this transformation as we have worked through it. So the biggest thing that we did in the last year was that we launched the Vermont State University. We welcomed the inaugural class of 2027. Again, thank you for all that you have done. And some of the statistics that I think are very important, we did hit our enrollment goals. We welcomed 1,400 undergraduate students. And the class of 2027, as I said, is just incredible in its demographics. So 52% are identified as the first people in their family to go to college. So important that we have this system to help them navigate a system that they are probably not familiar with. 53% are Pell eligible. 19% are identified as BIPOC, and 70% of them are Vermonters. So we are attractive to students from out of the state, but I think it's very important that 70% of our students are Vermonters. And I will be very excited when we graduate this first class. The second initiative I wanted to highlight is our nursing expansion. This really is a testament to transformation. It was made possible by Senator Leahy and this legislature. When we're complete with this transformation, we will have expanded enrollment in this program from 676 nurses to 1,000. It is that stackable credential. This is probably the biggest stackable credential and the biggest example that we have. It is meeting Vermont's workforce needs today, and that is so important. We are very excited about the expansion. We've already started to look at renovating buildings and really getting our infrastructure up to speed for what we need for this program. In addition, another program for healthcare has been our respiratory therapy training program revitalization. The gem of this program is it is the only program of its type in Vermont. And it is a collaboration between CCV, ETSU, the New Vermont State University, and the UVM Health Network. CCV provides the prerequisites to students before they enroll. VTSU has expanded their enrollment of this program so that more students have been able to enter into it. And the UVM Health Network provides financial support. And this is just one really great example of how partners can come together and really create something that is important for the state. Next example is early childhood education. As a person who was a dean of a college of education for 8 years, this kind of program is near and dear to my heart. And to me, this program shows that we Vermonters care about our youngest citizens, and that is so important. And I think all of you should be thanked for the funding that has been put into place through the tax incentives. We know that our ECE programs are showing high enrollment and very high interest. And this is, again, I think a really good example of a program that the Vermont State Colleges system has that really is meeting the needs of the workforce of those. One person in particular, Tammy Gosley, who is an ECE educator, she earned the 2023 Vermont Early Childhood Educator of the Year. And so not only are we providing these teachers, but we are really providing leaders and quality educators, which when we talk about quality childcare, it really is the educators and the buildings that the students are in that are so important. So I'm very excited about this one. It touches my heart. The next example is, again, another partnership between the Community College of Vermont and the state of Vermont. So there are a number of workers who have a lot of experience in their real lives, and what this partnership does is it allows those workers to receive credit for experience they've had in the workforce. 20 students enrolled from 12 divisions of state government and earned an average of 45 college credits in one 15-week semester. So you start out by taking learning that they've already done, and you intermingle that so that you can get them. That's a lot of credits for one 15-week semester. It represents an average tuition savings of $12,000 for these students, and over 600 classroom hours saved per student. You know, it's the money and the time that are very important to them. It has also translated to more than $250,000 in tuition savings for the state of Vermont, who obviously supports these students. So we're very excited about that partnership. Next is Vermont's prisoner education programs, which give incarcerated people a second chance to learn. We have been very excited. The Community College of Vermont has partnered with the Department of Corrections to rebuild its education offerings with a renewed focus on literacy skills for incarcerated Vermonters, giving them a second chance to learn. So important. I think you probably might have even seen Senator Sanders did a little blurb on this. He's also very interested in this. You know, to give these folks a second chance and a second chance at a meaningful life is just so important. So another good program I'm excited about.
So, Chancellor, may I just interrupt there for a second? So, are your teachers going into the prisons? Is that what happens? In fact, you're going into the prisons?
I believe this particular program is once they are out.
So it's the transition.
It's that transitional.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
But there are programs like that as well where college professors go into campuses. A lot of times, and I suspect that the focus on literacy skills is we need to get them up to speed so that they're ready for college when they're out and ready to go. And then another partnership between CCV and the McClure Foundation, which celebrated Free Degree Promise on National First Generation Student Day. So once again, removing barriers to accessing higher education, which really, again, is at the heart of our work. It's why I get up every single day. We're going to continue to do everything possible to ensure that the cost is not a deterrent to public higher education in Vermont. And let me just tell you, my experience tells me that this isn't, a lot of times when we talk about debt for students, we talk about their student loan debt after they've left. We have students who can't even do a semester because the amount of the bill that they have to pay for that semester is such that they can't even go that semester. And so what this allows is for students to be able to continue in their educational journey. This last year, 235 high school seniors from 90% of Vermont's high schools and tech centers enrolled in CCV's early college program, knowing that they're eligible for this free degree. So it's a lot of students that are impacted. And this just scratches the surface of what our students are up to. And we look forward to continuing to share their stories with you this session. So before I give you an update on transformation, I just want to provide a brief overview of our system once again. So first, the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees has given me very clear expectations and my senior leaders in what it is we're going to do to implement transformation. That is one of the key priorities that the board has given to me. The board consists of business leaders, community leaders, higher ed experts, change management experts, and strategic leaders. In particular, our legislative trustees are Representative Dickinson, who is our chair, Representative Durfee, Representative Maslin, and former Representative Wilbur. And I can tell you, I've only been here, so I've started my third week. They have been a real source of assistance to me as we are looking at how we're looking at those next stages for transformation, and then how we're looking to ensure that in the future we're continuing to innovate through this system.
If I may, this might be something Sharon or Drake might know better, but the rest of the board, does that come about? Aside from our role as the legislature, same kind of process. Hey, I know somebody, this would be great.
I thought they were also.
So the board is comprised of appointees from the General Assembly, 4 from the General Assembly, an additional 5 appointees that are appointed by the governor, 6 that are appointed by the governor, and then the remainder are what we consider self-sustaining members, and they are appointed by the Board of Trustees membership itself. Lastly, we do have a student who is a trustee on the board. So we have each of those individual compositions. The self-sustaining members, we typically try to make sure that we fill in the gaps of what might be missing from the appointees that come from the General Assembly or from the governor. So it might be that we're looking for someone from Rutland County to make sure that Rutland County is being represented, or it could be that we're looking for someone with finance experience or marketing, enrollment kinds of experience, et cetera, to help fill in and round out the needs of the Board of Trustees.
Thank you. So the Vermont State College's leadership consists of me, Joyce Judy, who I'm sure you all know, who is the president of CCB. She's been at CCB for more than 40 years. And David Berg, who is the new interim president at the Vermont State University. I think he started about 6 weeks before I did, but he is a longtime Vermonter and was in the system for many, many years at the Johnson campus. So he's very well aware, and he was in student affairs, very well aware of the system. I'll also remind everybody that the system consists of 2 institutions, first CCV and the Vermont State University. We offer academic programming in communities across the state, both in person and online, so that students can access the education they want in a way that works for them. I think one important thing, and again, when I talk about the gem of this system, is to understand that when we talk about these stackable credentials, we literally can have students entering through CCB and then continuing on to VTSU. But even once they're at VTSU, we currently have students who will take a course from CCB. And because we are one institution, those courses are naturally ingrained in the coursework that we're already taking, so there's no transfer piece to that. And that has been something that more and more of our students have taken advantage of. Just to talk a little bit about enrollment, this is a snapshot. So on October 15th, 2023, we were serving about 10,000 students. This is a head count, not an FTE. And you can see the differences in the 2 institutions and where they have those students. And I think this is very exciting to understand that at any given point in time, we are serving over 10,000 Vermonters with our academic programming. The next slide shows the number of degrees and credentials that we have awarded. So anything from certificates up to degrees, so bachelor's degrees, there were 719 last year, 703 associate's degrees. So students are being very successful. You'll have to remember that a student who comes in for a certificate program most likely is not looking for a degree, but they usually do get a certificate at the back end of it. So 357 students were able to get those. And then the total head count in 2022-2023 was 19,000 learners. 3,700 of those were workforce learners that were getting credit. They were getting credentials, but not for credit. And that is something Joyce Judy has particularly looked at, is how can we ensure that most of those students are actually getting credentials for credit. But what this tells you is that over a full year, we are impacting 19,306 learners. So there's 19,000, almost 20,000 distinct learners over any given year is what we are serving in Vermont, and those are mostly Vermonters. Now, mind you, each one of our students has had countless sleepless nights, long days, and weekends filled with work and meetings that they have to finish. This institution is just bigger than any one of us, and it ensures that we really want to ensure that it is serving the public good. We want to constantly be looking, when I talk about innovating, what is it that's for the public good today, what's for the public good tomorrow, and what's for the public good that are degrees that we haven't even thought of yet. While I'm just beginning my tenure as chancellor, the work done on behalf of this system over the past 4 years has brought us to a point that I'm incredibly grateful to those who have given their time, expertise, and hearts to transformation. I want to pass things over to Sharon to share an update, but I'm more than happy to take any questions before I do that.
Any immediate questions for the chancellor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for hearing from us this afternoon. We really appreciate it. Since 2020, as you know, we've really been engaged in a complete system transformation effort. We've been working hand in hand with the state to achieve financial sustainability, to really keep higher education accessible in the state of Vermont, particularly for our rural communities, and to also better serve our students. It's been essential work, and we know that it's been very difficult, not only for those of us who have been working on the transformation efforts itself, but also on the humans that are impacted, the individual faculty and staff. I was located at the Johnson location for 17 years before I took on this role. I was embedded as part of the institutional community that is Johnson State. I know deeply how hard it is to make change in our environment simply because it is so much a part of who you are. My son was 9 months old when I started working here, and he grew up on the Johnson campus. So I know exactly what this feels like, and many of the individuals who are impacted are my friends and colleagues. So I just want to start by saying that this is incredibly difficult work. That's very, very important to the state of Vermont. We're here today to really talk about this remarkable demonstration of teamwork, and we're very proud of the effort that we've accomplished. But we do know that we have so much more work to do to finish implementing what needs to be done to be truly sustainable as an institution and as a system. So I just want to step back just briefly and remind you of all that you have done for us. You as a legislature have been incredibly generous in your investment in Vermont State Colleges. So what I'm showing here is a picture of the investment that has been made in us to date, as well as giving you a sense as to what the plan is. And this chart here is actually very similar to one that I showed you 3 years ago. So it should be very similar, although there has been some movement since then. For example, one of the things that we were anticipating originally is that we would not be able to hit $48 million in terms of the general fund appropriation until next year. And you actually were able to accelerate that through the work that you were able to do. And that has been incredibly beneficial to the Vermont. But I also want to point out that as part of our work with your investment in us as a system, we also have to do continuous work in order to address our structural deficit. Now that need to address our structural deficit is there, and it's part of Act 74 of 2021, and it did come from recommendations that are part of the select committee. But the fact remains that we have to reduce our structural deficit because a balanced budget is necessary. And so if we don't make those adjustments, something else has to give in the environment. We need more enrollments, we need more general fund appropriation, whatever those things are. But we have to go on the presumption that we must right our own ship. You've been generous, and our responsibility is to do our part as well. And that has been the work that we have been solely focused on for the last 3.5 to 4 years. In terms of transformation to date, this timeline probably is very familiar to you, but I do want to just go through it. First, in 2020, the fall of 2020, the General Assembly established the Select Committee on the Future of Public Higher Education in Vermont. And out of that work, the committee recommended consolidating the bachelor's granting institutions, so Castleton, Northern Vermont University, which was comprised of the Johnson and Linden institutional locations, and Vermont Technical College into a single university. They also recommended aggressive administrative consolidations in order to be able to reduce expenditures and to reduce the overall structural deficit by $25 million a year, while simultaneously increasing the general fund appropriation by about 57.5% to $48 million. The Board of Trustees adopted these recommendations in the spring of 2021, and you as a legislature memorialized those recommendations in Act 74 of 2021 as well. That summer, recognizing the enormous size and scope of the endeavor before us, we launched a very formal project management process that allowed us to be able to really understand the size and and scope and efforts and track all of the individual work that we were doing. We also began the very hard work of unifying the academic programs across Vermont Tech, Castleton, and Northern Vermont University. And that was work that our faculty began in the summer, that same summer. In the spring of 2022, the New England Commission on Higher Education, NECHI, granted preliminary approval to accredit Vermont State University. They gave us a long list of things we had to do, but they gave preliminary approval to continue working towards that end goal. And we also launched a facilities study to help us understand, as part of the work that we were doing, what else do we need to do in addition to academics and administrative activities? What else can we do in order to address our structural issues? In the fall of 2022, we began the process to really convert some of our functions to shared services. We also finalized the first round of academic program optimization. We talk now about optimization 2.0, that was optimization 1.0, although at that time that's not how we referred to it. And we also opened up our applications for the very first class of Vermont State University. Since the close of the 2023 legislative session, we've continued the work to move forward with transformation. And we're excited to report that we received full accreditation for Vermont State University from NECHI this past spring, just in time, just in the nick of time. We also received full approval from the U.S. Department of Education to issue Title IV federal aid, which is also vital to our success. Not having federal aid would limit our ability to be an institution as a whole. Vermont State University, as Chancellor Mauch noted, met its projected enrollment targets for new and returning students. They also went forward and they established Optimization 2.0 for academic programs, and they really looked forward to creating a plan for administrative optimization as well. Both of these two items resulted in announcing that we would be able to reduce the structural deficit by approximately $6.4 million for the combined set of activities. We also launched last spring the facilities master plan, something that was funded by the General Assembly as part of our capital appropriation. And we announced, as Chancellor Mauch noted, the expansion of our nursing programs. One way that we really have positioned ourselves to address the structural deficit at Vermont State University is really by looking at these efforts for optimization in our academic and administrative programs. So academic optimization 2.0 really calls for programs to be maintained, sunsetted, moved, or consolidated. And we expect that it will save approximately $3.25 million overall. By this point next year, we anticipate that there will be 26 fewer full-time faculty members than there are today. It's about a 15.5% reduction in the full-time faculty metric. And while that is a big number, it is actually a smaller reduction than the actual reduction in the total number of students that we've seen in the last 10 years. In fact, it's also less than we've seen in the last 5 years. So what we're really attempting to do here is to make sure that our academic offerings and the number of offerings, the number of sections and the number of programs that we're offering are consistent with the number of students that we have available. We all know that the state of Vermont is experiencing, just as much of New England and frankly the Northeast, a demographic decline. And that with fewer graduating high school seniors and fewer individuals who may even be considering academics and job changes, that this becomes a challenge for us moving forward. So making sure that we have scheduled our academic programs in a way that is consistent with what we anticipate the state of Vermont's needs to be is really important to us. It is very challenging to make those changes. Academic optimization 1.0 was really the bringing together of the three institutions' academic programs. Academic optimization 2.0 is the movement and the reduction of programs to make sure that we're streamlining and offering the right number of sections so that we are able to move forward effectively. This has been a very heavy lift, and it's really been meant to be thoughtful and intentional. Our faculty were involved, academic administration was involved, but it is something that we really need to be focused on in order to make sure that the offerings that we have are ones that we can afford to have and meet the needs of the students that we have today, but even more importantly, the students that we anticipate having 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. In terms of administrative optimization, this plan was released in October, and it results in the streamlining of administrative, managerial, and clerical functions that will realize approximately $3.1 million in total savings. They come through the reduction of about 33 full-time positions, of which 2/3 of them are executive, managerial, and supervisory. Every level of the organization was looked at, and what we really were looking at was, since we merged the institutions, we had already made reductions, for example, to reduce the number of presidents. We now needed to take a look at how many resources do we need to supervise the current number of people. So for example, one of the things that was looked at is what is the span of control that's appropriate for a manager or an executive? Do you have a manager who has 2 employees or a manager who has 8? And so the opportunity here was to really look at how we structure the organization to be nimble and efficient while simultaneously meeting the needs of the organization as a whole. And really was there to make us more nimble and efficient. Chancellor Mauck talked a little bit about the structure of the organization from a managerial perspective. I want to talk about it just in terms of organizationally who we are. So as she noted, we do have 2 institutions, CCB and Vermont State University. We are governed by the chancellor, who serves as the system's CEO. So the chancellor is a funny position. In some places they're called presidents, for some systems in other places they're chancellors. The best way to think about it is really to think about it as the system's chief executive officer of a $185 million corporation. She directs the activities of the presidents and oversees the system's shared services. Additionally, she really establishes the external affairs strategy and direction, establishes and implements board policy, and coordinates overall system academics. That's really what the full scope of the chancellor position is. But the chancellor function in our new system is actually a very small part of the organization. It is comprised of the chancellor's assistant, who directly supports the board of trustees, the director of external affairs, Drake, and government relations, and a system-wide chief academic officer. The real bulk of the organization is actually governed by the 2 institutions, Community College of Vermont and Vermont State University. And it's actually really interesting when we think about our system in terms of size and scope. The Community College of Vermont actually has about 55% of the total number of students enrolled. And I know when we think about the system, often we think of Vermont State University because it has big locations with big residential footprint, but CCV has 55% of the total head count of students. Simultaneously, Vermont State University has about 45%. Now, we all know that community college students typically might be only taking 1 or 2 classes, but it is a large component of the work. And when we talked before about the nearly 20,000 students who come through the Vermont State colleges, about more than half of them are coming through the community college. In terms of a full-time equivalency status, CCV has about 38% and Vermont State University has about 62%. And that's because the community college does have a population that's coming in. They might be taking workforce classes, maybe they're upskilling, they might be taking the prerequisites necessary to take another degree program, but they really are in a position where they are really serving a huge number of Vermonters. In fact, and when we look at the number of Vermonters and the proportion of that headcount that is served, 70% of the students enrolled at Vermont State University this year are Vermonters. More than 90% of them are Community College of Vermont students. Both institutions are serving highly Pell eligible populations at more than 50%. When we look at the overall organization, in addition, sitting between the 2 institutions is shared services. And I talked before that part of the select committee recommendations was aggressive administrative consolidation. And that really was referring to the creation of shared services, much like the state of Vermont, where there is a human resources office that serves all agencies within the state of Vermont, or information technology that serves all agencies. The idea here is to put between the institutions a set of services that serves both the community college, Vermont State University, and the people who also work within shared services. So it covers information technology, which includes help desk, things, internet, desktop support, classroom support, software development, big system integration, cybersecurity, and all those things. Human resources, where it covers things like payroll and benefits management, as well as classification systems, finance and administration, everything from handling our banking and audit and tax services, accounting and accounts payable, to library systems. Now, interestingly, library systems are unique in that we do share a common library across both institutions. And lastly, legal services, where we review contracts and handle labor negotiations and kinds of things. For many decades, parts of these services have resided in what we formerly called the Chancellor's Office, but they really were a shared service. Finance has always had a shared service component. Legal services, we don't exist to exist, we exist because we serve. Information technology that existed at the Chancellor's Office existed not because we wanted to have an IT organization, but because we needed to provide internet and an enterprise resource planning system for our faculty and staff to be able to handle registrations and bills, to be able to deal with our accounting, etc. And so really what we have tried to do in this last 18 months is really try and consolidate those services that might have been at disparate different locations at our institutions and bring them all into a shared services organization. So for example, the biggest one of those, which resulted in the most people, is actually taking individuals who worked previously for Vermont State University, location, and Community College of Vermont, and bring them into shared services from information. However, they still sit at the same desk, they still support the same people, they still work on the same activities, but they now have backup between their colleagues at different locations. So if someone gets ill, if someone goes out on maternity leave, if someone resigns, there is someone immediately available who is backing them up and who can make sure that the services are provided. It really allows us to improve our service, offer better legal compliance, offer stronger systems, and ultimately reduced costs. So what's next as we move forward? The Vermont State Colleges is continuing to support our students and the economy and community, and it's really essential that we achieve our financial stability. We're on this 5-year path to hit a balanced budget by FY27, and we're committed to fulfilling that mandate. We've made great progress, but we know that we have a long ways to go. Up to this point, we've hit the first $10 million in savings, and the next $5 million is scheduled for FY25. That budget is currently under development right now, and we are on track to hit that. And we have additional items that we know need to be done. We are in the process of realigning our total compensation and really understanding how does our total compensation match with peer institutions, and also really considering as part of our master planning process the mindfully reduction of our physical footprint. I've shared with you before that the Vermont State Colleges is overbuilt, and that's not going to go away. We need to really be thinking about what that looks like. So we're going to be committed to continuing this work as responsibly and transparently as we possibly can, and we look forward to sharing more of this with you. So that concludes our presentation, and we look forward to answering any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. Senator Dewar, please.
Yeah, it's a great presentation, and I have some comments, questions, observations, a little bit of everything. But generally, thanks for doing this hard work. I know this is not easy, and transformation is always hard, change is hard. I'm just going to start with the fact that we're doing a lot of work in literacy in this committee, and I would probably posit that it's happening all over the state. I know that Vermont State University did not get a great grade with teacher prep programming. And so I would just sort of beseech you very kindly to please consider giving up whole language teaching of literacy and really try to steer yourselves towards science-based literacy strategies. That would be much appreciated, and it would align with what we're trying to do here and across the state. Thank you.
I think that makes total sense. I'm actually going to switch seats with Chancellor Mao.
Okay.
And I will be available for other questions.
Because the college, I worked in the College of Education, that is certainly something that I know a lot about and look forward to working with our faculty. I know this to me is part of the continuous improvement, and I think that is a very important aspect of literacy education.
That would be absolutely wonderful. Just also wanted to point out the incredible data coming out of the Community College of Vermont, the 55% head count, the 38% FTE. That's really impressive. So shout out there. Sure.
I certainly see, as I said, this is a gem of a system, and I see the Community College of Vermont allowing us to have a lot of people that come into the system understanding the value of higher ed and then continuing on both at the Community College of Vermont and Vermont State University. So
yeah, absolutely. I know this is a hard thing to do, but it's great that you're looking at ratios. I would say that ratios are being looked at in the K through 12 system as well. It's important to continually update and see, what's happening in the landscape. I'm curious what you have found the typical ratio is for a school your size. Do you have a sense of what that is?
I know we've been talking somewhere between 13 and 18, and I think somewhere in there is probably the right kind of number where it allows you to have some larger class sizes, which makes sense. I taught a college algebra class last semester with 30 students, and there are classes where you can have that many. There are other classes, especially as you get higher up, where you need fewer students, nursing programs where you do so. Somewhere between the 13 and the 18 number probably does make sense. Having a soul like that is
great. My only other comment or question is, I guess I'm just generally impressed that there is a $3 billion healthcare savings in your plan, because that seems really rare right now. Any kind of savings in healthcare seems untenable or untouchable.
I would agree. And that certainly is something we're looking into. We're right now self-insured, and so looking at a new system where you can keep the benefit to the employees similar is something that's very interesting.
Yeah, I'll be excited to watch that. Maybe we can even talk about it in healthcare.
Yeah, we should invite these guys in.
I was thinking, that's what I was thinking.
I just interrupt just briefly. We are really looking at total compensation, which when we look at the compensation structure of the Vermont State Colleges, it is cash poor, benefits rich. And so one of the things that we really want to understand is how does that work in the overall environment, and how does that work relative to recruiting, particularly many young people come in today and they're not expecting to be here for 20, 30, 40 years. It's a very different environment. How does that work for students, for incoming new employees, et cetera? So looking at the total compensation structure is really where that's coming from. But we do know that we are a little out of balance already. It's a question of using some outside resources to help us understand how far out of balance are we and what can we do.
Very good. Just a couple questions. First off, thank you both for very insightful presentations. You're in a very challenging environment. We get that, but thank you for the presentation. A couple questions. The total compensation realignment and fiscal footprint reduction efforts, when do you think you'll have something solid that you're willing to offer?
So we are in the process of working on our master plan right now. That master plan is expected to conclude this spring. The expectation is that we wanted to have that conclude this spring, recognizing that we begin conversations about the next biennium in the fall. with the administration. So it would be later this spring. In terms of total compensation, we will be in active negotiations with our full-time collective bargaining units within the next month or two. Several of our agreements expire at the end of this academic year. And so we'll have some information that will look like that, but that will inform the negotiating of what that looks like. Of course, this is an active negotiation process. We do not and cannot impose unilaterally changes. We work with our collective bargaining units to make sure that what we are doing is in keeping with the needs of our employees and the needs of the Vermont State Colleges.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned master plan. Is this effort including creating centers of excellence in different campuses or reconfiguring curriculum?
Well, the master plan would just be the buildings.
Just buildings.
Yes.
So then, in the form of a question, do you also have a strategy, like a master strategy that you're embarking on developing to make best use of all these facilities or best use of what you project student populations will be 10 years from now, that kind of effort?
So can I interject? So academic optimization.
I should mention, it's the chancellor. I wouldn't say your plane just landed in town, but I just want to make sure everybody.
I have thoughts on
It is
that.
extremely generous of you to be here this early after.
Academic optimization 2.0 has informed the work related to the master plan. So we actually delayed some elements of conversations regarding the facilities work to understand what the recommendations were that were going to come out of the academic optimization. Academic optimization, as I noted, makes recommendations to close, relocate, sunset, and do other work related to programs with an eye towards identifying program locations for centers of excellence at individual locations that really support the needs of that campus location with an eye towards academic vibrancy, community vibrancy, and also making sure that we are delivering on the programs that we need. So the master plan itself is informed by that work. We don't want the tail to wag the dog. Facilities shouldn't tell academics what to do. We let academics tell facilities what we should be working on. And so that work began with the work the faculty was doing with academic administration and the optimization 2.0 plan. That has then flowed into the work that is working with our master planners. And the master planning group is comprised of some outside folks who work with us, some consultants here in the state of Vermont, but also Dumont and Jenks out of Boston, as well as faculty and staff and others from Vermont State University to help drive what this looks like as we move forward. So that work is currently ongoing right now.
Overall, yes, everything she said. Overall, the way I would think about this in the longer term, you're talking about 10 years from now, is in higher ed, we have not historically been agile. And so one of the things that we're going to have to be able to do is to figure out that as the demands of the workforce change, as the needs of the population change, how can we ensure that this system and network of academic spaces we have continues to meet the need of all Vermonters in the spaces where they need it to be. And so this work certainly is informing the short term, but we've got to really continue. We can't assume that what we're going to do today is something that will make sense 20 years from now. And so I think really what we need to be doing is setting up systems where we can be very, very much more agile, because it is the systems that have been able to be agile that are the ones that are having the most success.
Okay, good. And final question for me. So I know you weren't here during the past several years, but you said that you studied it as you were probably preparing for your interviews and what have you. Given the experience of academic optimization and administrative optimization 1.0, 2.0, et cetera, we're going to go into a 3.0, right? There's going to be another optimization of one type or another, or many phases. What lessons learned did you derive from what you learned about over the past, what we've experienced over the past couple of years, that at least sets a framework for you for the next year or so?
I would certainly say, they were asking me during my interview, what have I learned from my successes? And I told them that I've learned much more from my failures than my successes. And one of the things I have learned whenever you're trying to move a large organization is you've got to ensure that you're bringing all of your stakeholders along and that everybody understands what you're doing. And as you are making decisions, you're understanding that they will have an impact on folks far flung. And so really looking at that and trying to ensure that as we make some of these announcements, as we're making some of these decisions, we're doing so understanding what our stakeholders and what those who are internal to the system are seeing, and trying to ensure that we're bringing them along as we go. I would say the other part of this, and again, I also sort of watched this from the Chronicle of Higher Ed from Kansas. I was sitting in Kansas, so some of these things in Vermont certainly remain very public. The other piece of this is that as you're making these decisions, I think you have to be real clear and really understand in your own mind why this benefits students. It's why you will start to hear me talk an awful lot about our students. Our students necessarily don't have the same needs that they had 20 years ago. And so we've got to ensure that we're always keeping up with them. And so I think our number one goal has to be students, and then ensuring that our stakeholders, which really is a lot of the folks in the state of Vermont, understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and just repeating the message over and over again. Like assuming that someone has heard this just because we've talked in here today, it really isn't enough. Just to continually be talking about why we think these moves are important, I think will be very important. So those are probably the two lessons I have learned from my own mistakes that I think I can bring to this system and help. I can tell you the first thing I always think as we're doing anything is how will this impact others, and how can we ensure that they understand why we're doing what we're doing.
Any final thoughts for the Chancellor at this point? Chancellor, it is very generous of you to come so early in your tenure. It truly is. I recognize that it's we're still getting settled, but it's great for all of us to know you. I hope you will call on us whenever you need us in any way we possibly can be helpful. We will certainly try to be.
Just one question. Previous administration, we're talking about a strategic plan, and I never saw it, even though we got 10 pounds of book here. I'd like to hear your vision. Are you still going to use optimization 2.0? Because from what I just heard, that changed.
I certainly think the decisions that have been made so far, were made by stakeholders with the best intentions for this system. So I would assume that we will continue to move along with that. For a strategic plan, actually one of the things that I think the Vermont State Colleges system needs is something to work on where we can plan together for the goodness of our students. And again, that's why you'll hear me say this again. And so one of the things I am hopeful for as we're moving forward is that it does include new structures of strategic plans. Another thing we learned in higher ed, we used to do these strategic plans for 10 years and you simply can't do that. But what is the plan moving forward? How are we going to continue to meet the needs of the students that we have today? How are we going to dream up the programs that will be the programs that our students tomorrow need? And honestly, a lot of that's our faculty and staff, and it's also our workforce partners. We need workforce partners to tell us what they need, and we need our internal stakeholders to tell us how they think that they can deliver that. And in my career, that is where I found the best synergies, is working together with folks in the legislature, in business, in K-12 education, and the higher ed institution, and just creating those synergies to make programs that are the best for the students of Vermont.
Thank you.
I think we're going to have to leave it there. Chancellor, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Scott, thank you. Ms. Turner, thank you. And we'll look forward to seeing you all soon. Committee, we're doing a switch here, so why don't we just take a minute while our witness gets settled. I'm going to take us